Welcome back to the Story Weaver After Dark. We've already wandered with witches through their spells and shadows. We've danced with vampires through eternity, bathed in crimson candlelight. But tonight, the moon is full. The air thickens, the bones ache, and the beast within is scratching at the door. This is the final chapter of our supernatural trilogy, where civility rips at the seams and instinct takes over. Tonight we count down the top 20 werewolf movies of all time, from Playful pups to primal horror. So lock the doors, keep your silver bullets close, and remember, monsters aren't born, they're unleashed. Number 20, Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf from 1988. Before we dive into flesh-rending terror, let's start with something light enough for the kids to watch without sleeping with a nightlight. In Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf, Shaggy is suddenly transformed into a werewolf by Dracula himself, and the only cure is to win a wacky monster car race. It's equal parts Looney Tunes and late 80s VHS nostalgia. The animation may creak a little now, but the color palette and slapstick energy capture everything wonderful about Saturday morning horror for beginners. It's Shaggy embracing his inner monster, literally, and reminding us that sometimes even the silliest howl counts. Feral fact: Casey Kasem, the original voice of Shaggy, nearly refused to return because he'd just become a strict vegetarian and didn't want Shaggy eating meat on screen. Hanna-Barbera rewrote the lines to keep their star happy, meaning even in wolf form, Shaggy stayed cruelty-free. But when you mix werewolves and self-discovery, the next story proves sometimes the furriest hearts beat the bravest. Number 19, 100% Wolf from 2020. A modern animated gem that never quite got its due. 100% Wolf follows Freddie Lupin, heir to a proud family of werewolves who, on his first transformation, becomes a pink poodle. Humiliation, identity crises, and heroism ensue. Beneath the bright colors and jokes is a surprisingly heartfelt story about legacy and self-acceptance. Freddie's fight to prove he's still a real wolf inside hits home for anyone who's ever felt they didn't measure up. Feral fact: the film was produced in Australia and used motion capture for key chase scenes, a first for an Australian animated feature. It also spawned a TV spin-off proving even pink poodles can start a pack. But if you think being an outcast pup is rough, try living under a medieval curse, where the wolves don't sparkle, they stalk. Number 18, Wolfwalkers from 2020. From the studio behind Song of the Sea comes this hand-drawn masterpiece that feels like folklore set to motion. Wolfwalkers tells the tale of Robin, a hunter's daughter in 17th century Ireland who befriends Meb, a wild child whose spirit runs with wolves when she sleeps. It's a lush blend of myth, rebellion, and empathy. An animated poem about learning to see nature not as the enemy but as kin. The art style alone, with its layered pencil textures and glowing edges, looks carved straight from a storybook left open under moonlight. Feral fact: director Tom Moore based the Celtic designs on woodcuts from the 1600s, intentionally flattening the perspective to mimic medieval tapestries. Every frame was hand-inked, not one line of CG fur in sight. But from fairytale forests, we move into something far darker. A Brazilian legend that asks what happens when the beast within becomes the only way to survive. Number 17, Good Manners from 2017. Good Manners begins like a quiet drama. A lonely nurse hired to care for a mysterious pregnant woman. Halfway through, it turns into something wild. A tender, horrific fairy tale where motherhood and monstrosity blur. Part romance, part tragedy, part werewolf fable. It's a film that defies genre the way its creature defies nature. The transformation scenes are haunting not for their gore, but for their heartbreak. Feral fact: directors Juliana Rojas and Marco Dutra used stop-motion models for the child wolf sequences to give them a dreamlike uncanniness, halfway between puppet and living being. It's one of the rare horror films to win Brazil's top film award for Best Picture. Love and loss run deep in werewolf lore, but sometimes the monsters come home for dinner. Number 16, Bad Moon from 1996. Bad Moon strips werewolf cinema down to its rawest instinct: family, loyalty, and blood. When a man returns from the jungle bitten by a beast, his sister and her German shepherd become his last link to humanity, and his next victims. It's told mostly through the dog's eyes, which makes it both unsettling and strangely noble. No cheap jump scares, just primal tension. A battle of wills between man's best friend and man's worst nightmare. Feral fact: the transformation effects were done by Steve Johnson, who used inflatable bladders under latex skin instead of full animatronics, creating one of the most realistic snout stretches of the 1990s. But the jungle doesn't just infect people. Sometimes it infects the city itself. Number 15. An American Werewolf in Paris from 1997. The spiritual sequel to the 1981 classic went heavy on CGI and light on common sense, but it's still worth a moonlight revisit. An American Werewolf in Paris swaps practical horror for late 90s adrenaline, bungee jumping, techno clubs, and digital fur that hasn't aged gracefully. Yet, beneath the chaos is a surprisingly earnest attempt to modernize the legend. Young travelers, secret societies, and love amid bloodshed. It's messier than its predecessor, but there's a charm to its reckless energy. Feral fact: the film's soundtrack reads like a who's who of 1997 alt-rock. Bush, Cake, Better Than Ezra, Fastball. Columbia Records marketed it more like a rock album than a horror release. Let's rewind to the 1990s again, but this time, the wolves aren't chasing tourists. They're wearing Armani. Number 14. Wolf from 1994. Jack Nicholson and Michelle Pfeiffer in a werewolf movie directed by The Graduate's Mike Nichols. It sounds like an Oscar fever dream. Wolf turns lycanthropy into metaphor following an aging editor whose bite of infection reignites his predatory confidence. It's a corporate thriller wrapped in Gothic fur. Boardrooms by day, hunting grounds by night. Instead of screaming transformation, we get Nicholson's restrained ferocity. The slow return of the animal spirit in a man who'd forgotten how to live. Feral fact: the makeup team built Nicholson's prosthetics to subtly resemble a timberwolf skull structure, not a snout. Nichols wanted elegance, not horror. The result is the most distinguished werewolf ever to quote Shakespeare. But elegance burns away on the tracks of a midnight train. Number 13. Howl from 2015. Howl traps a trainload of passengers in the English countryside after their engine hits something furry under a full moon. As they wait for rescue, the wolves close in. It's Alien on rails, tense, claustrophobic, and surprisingly funny in spots. The film knows its limitations and uses them well. Small space, tight lighting, practical creatures, you can feel the metal tremble under each attack. Feral fact: the production reused decommissioned commuter train cars from the London Underground and shot nearly all the night sequences indoors with real condensation machines to simulate cold breath. No digital fog here. From trains to fairy tales. Next, we trade locomotives for red capes and dangerous woods. Number 12. The Company of Wolves from 1984. A Gothic fever dream from Neil Jordan, The Company of Wolves retells Little Red Riding Hood through nightmares, puberty, and folklore. Each story within the story peels another layer from the myth until innocence itself howls. Angela Carter's script, based on her own short stories, treats the werewolf as a metaphor for awakening. Sexual, emotional, human. The set design is pure surrealism. Wolves emerging from men's mouths, dolls melting into flesh, forests breathing like lungs. Feral fact: the transformations used wax mask melts filmed in reverse, an early practical effect that inspired Rick Baker's later work on An American Werewolf in London. But sometimes the fairy tale doesn't end with a lesson. It gets recycled and told in a different way. Number 11. Red Riding Hood from 2011. Catherine Hardwicke, fresh off Twilight, delivered this medieval romance steeped in snow, suspicion, and sin. Amanda Seyfried's Valerie is torn between love and fear as a werewolf terrorizes her village. It's visually gorgeous, crimson cloaks against pale snow, and drenched in melodrama. Critics dismissed it, but time has been kind. Beneath the glossy surface is a clever riff on hysteria and forbidden desire. Feral fact: the production built an entire snowy village set inside a Vancouver soundstage, kept at refrigerator temperatures to prevent melting under lights. Even the breath you see is real. Snow melts, blood steams, and soldiers soon take the field, as our next film drags werewolves straight into the war zone. Number 10. Dog Soldiers from 2002. Before The Descent, before Game of Thrones, Neil Marshall gave us one of the grittiest, most gloriously practical werewolf films ever made. Dog Soldiers traps a squad of Scottish soldiers on a remote training mission in the Highlands, where they're attacked by a pack of ravenous beasts. The result is part war film, part siege horror, and 100% chaos. There's no romance, no tortured metaphors, just screaming, shooting, and blood spraying across the walls like red confetti. The banter is sharp, the suspense is relentless, and the camaraderie feels real, which makes each bite hit harder. Feral fact: the werewolf suits stood nearly 7 feet tall. Marshall deliberately designed them to appear elegant rather than grotesque, inspired by ballerina's posture. Upright, regal, yet utterly deadly. But when the guns fall silent, some towns fight their monsters with humor instead of bullets. Number 9. Werewolves Within from 2021. A small-town murder mystery with fur. Werewolves Within proves that horror comedy isn't dead, it just needed a good chew toy. Based on the Ubisoft video game, yes, really, the film follows a newly arrived forest ranger and a postal worker trapped in a blizzard with the town's eccentrics. One of them is a werewolf, but everyone's too busy arguing to notice. The tone balances satire and sincerity. Its Clue meets The Thing with a big bleeding heart underneath. What sets it apart is how it turns werewolf paranoia into a story about trust, a rare theme in modern horror. Feral fact: director Josh Rubin shot the entire film during the height of the 2020 pandemic, quarantining the cast together at a remote lodge. That real isolation helped create the claustrophobic tension on screen. But for every modern laugh, there's always a howl from the past. And the next film tears into that nostalgia with fangs bared. Number 8. Ginger Snaps from 2000. No list of werewolf cinema is complete without Ginger Snaps. I know I've mentioned it in other lists, but it has to go here too. Two teenage sisters obsessed with death, suburbia, and each other find their bond tested when one is bitten by a creature lurking in the woods. What follows is both coming-of-age horror and feminist manifesto. The film redefines lycanthropy as puberty, body horror as metaphor for menstruation, sexuality, and rebellion. It's smart, sickly funny, and ferociously sad. Emily Perkins and Catherine Isabelle make the sisters' dynamic unforgettable, equal parts affection and resentment. Feral fact: the film's production design used autumn leaves imported from a different city because the local trees were still green during filming. The result gave it that permanent Halloween tone that horror fans crave. From suburban dread to city legend, our next stop brings a murder mystery story with a supernatural twist. Number 7. Wolfen from 1981. 3 werewolf films came out in 1981. The Howling, An American Werewolf in London, and Wolfen. Each redefined the genre in its own way. Wolfen is the quietest, the most cerebral, and arguably the most haunting. Albert Finney plays a New York detective investigating a series of killings that appear animalistic but eerily deliberate. The truth? A supernatural race of wolves defending their sacred territory from human greed. It's part horror, part ecological parable. The cinematography, using a thermal wolf vision, creates a visual language that feels alien and predatory. It's not about silver bullets or curses, it's about the ancient balance we broke when we decided we ruled the world. Feral fact: Director Michael Wadley, previously known for the documentary Woodstock, used a prototype Steadicam rig modified with infrared filters to simulate wolf sight. The camera's distorted depth field inspired future tech like the Predator's vision in 1987. But sometimes, terror doesn't hide in skyscrapers. It walks down a dirt road in small-town America wearing a smile. Number 6. Silver Bullet from 1985. Based on Stephen King's novella Cycle of the Werewolf, this 80s gem balances warmth and terror like only King can. A wheelchair-bound boy named Marty suspects a werewolf is behind a string of murders in his town, and with the help of his sister and boozy Uncle Red, played by Gary Busey in peak Gary Busey form, he decides to hunt it down himself. It's an old-fashioned monster movie with heart, the kind of horror that scares you, then hugs you after. The script's rhythm and King's character work turn what could have been pulp into something oddly poignant. Feral fact: the mechanical werewolf malfunctions so often that King himself called it Cujo's uglier cousin. Most of the suspense scenes were rewritten to show less of the creature and more of the atmosphere, making it even scarier. But not every legend stays in paperback. Some are drawn in black and white and come roaring to life under Marvel's moonlight. Number 5. Werewolf by Night from 2022. Not technically a movie, but this Marvel Studios special presentation earns its place through sheer style. Shot in luminous black and white, it pays homage to 1930s monster cinema while introducing a new hero, Jack Russell, a monster hunter cursed to become one himself. It's elegant, violent, and deeply romantic. Proof that even a corporate giant like Marvel can craft a Gothic masterpiece when it remembers to use shadow instead of spectacle. Feral fact: director Michael Giacchino, better known for composing scores for movies like Up and The Incredibles, personally wrote and conducted the music. He used a full orchestra to emulate 1940s horror soundtracks, complete with theremin and vintage microphones. But if Marvel gave us a new monster under the spotlight, our next story reminds us that sometimes fame itself is the curse. Number 4. Teen Wolf from 1985. Basketball, body hair, and life lessons. Teen Wolf turned lycanthropy into a high school metaphor. Michael J. Fox stars as Scott Howard, the average kid who becomes his town's star athlete once he discovers his family curse. It's pure 80s cheese, but the kind that ages into comfort food. The real monster here isn't the werewolf. It's popularity, ego, and losing yourself in the crowd. The film's charm lies in its innocence. It's horror that smiles. Feral fact: Fox filmed Teen Wolf and Back to the Future back-to-back. During one stretch, he'd finish night shoots playing a werewolf and go directly to day shoots as Marty McFly. Talk about time travel fatigue. But after the laughs fade, we return to the classics, the kind that come with a bite. Number 3. The Wolfman from 1941. Here's where the curse began. Lon Chaney Jr.'s The Wolfman wasn't the first werewolf movie, but it became the werewolf movie. It gave us the mythology: full moons, silver bullets, the tragedy of the man who becomes the beast. Chaney's performance is pure sorrow. Unlike Dracula or Frankenstein's monster, his Lawrence Talbot is painfully human, doomed by fate and conscience. And Jack Pierce's makeup, layer by layer of yak hair and spirit gum, remains one of horror's most iconic designs. Feral fact: Chaney spent 6 hours each day in the makeup chair and could barely move once the layers set. He famously drank his meals through a straw because removing the prosthetics mid-shoot would take hours. But tradition never stays buried. And in the modern age, the curse got stylish, savage, and self-aware. Number 2. The Howling from 1981. Joe Dante's The Howling was one of the year's other legendary werewolf films, releasing just months before An American Werewolf in London. It follows a traumatized reporter who retreats to a countryside therapy colony, only to find its home to a pack of werewolves living in secret. It's sleazy, stylish, and wildly original. The mix of self-help culture and primal hunger makes it a perfect snapshot of early 80s horror cynicism. And Rob Bottin's transformation effects? Groundbreaking. Skin bubbling, bone shifting, the beast clawing through human flesh. Barrel fact. To save time, Botten designed reusable transformation molds that could reset overnight, allowing the team to shoot more than one metamorphosis per week, unheard of for the time. But if the Howling was a scream, our final film was a full, unholy symphony. Number 1. An American Werewolf in London from 1981. Equal parts horror, comedy, and heartbreak, John Landis's An American Werewolf in London remains the definitive werewolf movie. Two American backpackers encounter a creature on the moors. One dies, the other changes. David's descent into madness, guilt, and transformation is both horrifying and strangely tender. A perfect collision of tragedy and absurdity. Rick Baker's effects raise the bar forever. The full body transformation, tendons stretching, bones cracking in real time, remains cinema's gold standard. And that ending, silent and brutal, reminds us that curses rarely come with closure. Barrel fact. Baker's work on this film earned him the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup, a category that literally didn't exist until American Werewolf forced the Academy to create it. And that was the last howl of Halloween before we head into Thanksgiving. Starting with Scooby-Doo's reluctant race to the mournful moors of London, we followed fur, fangs, and folklore across nearly a century of cinema. The witches cast their spells, we took a bite out of vampire lore, and now the wolves have had their night beneath the blood moon. 3 creatures, 3 kinds of hunger. Power, passion, and freedom. Together they form the trinity of our darkest dreams. But even monsters need rest. The long shadow of October fades as we are now into November, and the chill in the air smells more like pumpkin pie and apple cider than grave dirt. The Storyweaver's den grows warmer, the light softer. Because next time we'll trade silver bullets for stuffing and spend a little time in the glow of nostalgia. We'll kick off the season with some awesome Thanksgiving animated specials, the comfort food of childhood TV. Before heading into Christmas magic, holiday ghosts, and the sparkle of simpler times. The monsters aren't gone, my friends. They're just hibernating under the snow, waiting for another full moon. Until then, keep your curtains drawn, your silver polished, and your gratitude loud, because even the darkest stories deserve a little light. This is the Storyweaver After Dark, wishing you sweet dreams and sweeter screams.